To get started, are there any questions on the homework assignments?
What's the first homework?
First one, 3.1.1 was 3 through 10. 3.12 yesterday was 11 through 23 odd. All right. Last thing we're covering on 3.1 is this product called, or property called the zero product property. The zero product property. Now, the zero product property is actually quite helpful. It states that if the product of two expressions is zero, then one or both of the expressions has to be zero. If A and B are expressions and A times B equals 0, then A has to be equal to 0 or B has to be equal to 0. Zero product property, all it says, if I take two things and multiply them together to be 0, one of them has to be 0. The only way we can multiply two things together and get 0 is if one or both of them is 0. Normally it's just going to be one or the other is 0. The only way they could both be 0 is, well, if A is equal to B, if they are the same expression. So, if we look at the first one, k plus 1 times k minus 5 equals 0. I do have two things multiplied together to equal 0. We're multiplying k plus 1 and k minus 5 together. These two expressions are being multiplied together to equal 0. So the only way I can multiply k plus 1 and k minus 5 together and get 0 is if one of these two is 0. We're saying that either k plus 1 is equal to 0 or k minus 5 is equal to 0. The only way I can multiply two expressions together and get 0 is if one of the two expressions is 0. Now at this point here we can solve. K plus 1. To get k by itself we would. Minus 1 from both sides. Because negative 1 plus 1 is 0. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So it's telling us if k is equal to negative 1, that entire left side is going to become 0. K plus 5. If we solve this here, we would add 5 to both sides, telling us k is equal to 5. That's it. Yeah. Now, you don't have to write this next part because I'm going to check it. So if we said k is negative 1, so negative 1 plus 1 times negative 1 minus 5, well, negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. 0 times negative 6 is, it does indeed give us 0. I could do the same thing with 5. Because we'd have 5 plus 1 times 5 minus 5. Well, 5 plus 1 is 6. 5 minus 5 is 0. And 6 times 0 is indeed 0. So it gave us two values of x that would make the function, or two values of k that would make this equation be 0. Because if we have two or more things multiplied together to equal 0, one of them has to be 0. That's just what the zero product property tells us. So if we look at this one here, 2m plus 3 times 4m plus 3 equals 0. I do have two things multiplied together to equal 0, so one of them has to be 0. So that's telling us that either 2m plus 3 is 0, or 4m plus 3 is equal to 0. According to the zero product property, if we multiply two things together and they equal 0, one of them has to be 0. Now we just need to solve for m. So with 2m plus 3 equals 0, the first thing we can do in solving for m is to subtract 3 from both sides. Because our 3 minus 3 would be 0, leaving us with 2m. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, 0 minus 3 would be negative 3. M is not by itself, so we'd have to divide both sides by 2. 2m divided by 2 would be m. Does negative 3 divide by 2 nicely? No, it doesn't simplify, it doesn't divide, so we can just leave it as negative 3 halves. So one of the two solutions for this is that m is equal to negative 3 halves. 4m plus 3. First thing we can do is subtract 3, telling us 4m is equal to negative 3. And just like the last one, we can divide both sides by 4, telling us m is equal to negative 3 fourths. 3 does not divide by 4 nicely. It doesn't reduce, so we can just say m is negative 3 fourths. So our two solutions that we have for this here is negative 3 halves and negative 3 fourths. Those are the two values of m that would make this function be 0. Those are the solutions. 0 minus 3.
Oh, okay.
Questions on this here? We ready for the next one? Yes? So when we look at this one here, we do have two things multiplied together that equal 0, yes? Because what's being multiplied together? We don't have anything, do we? We have x squared plus 10x plus 21 equals 0. We have this quadratic. So what we're going to do is what we've been doing this whole week is we're going to factor x squared plus 10x plus 21. Because when we factored it, we ended up with two sets of parentheses being multiplied together. So when we look at this here, we're going to factor the x squared plus 10x plus 21, not factoring the equal 0. Because when we factor this, is solved by factoring this zero product property. The first thing we want to do is make sure that all the terms are on the left-hand side. We have x squared, 10x, 21. All of our terms are on the left-hand side, and we want this thing set equal to 0. We want it set equal to 0. And we do have that here. First thing we're going to look, is there a greatest common factor between x squared, 10x, and 21? No. So we can move on to step 2, which is our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now, because this is an equation, we have it set equal to 0, it's still going to be set equal to 0. Because all we're doing is factoring that left-hand side. So that takes care of steps 1 and 2. Step number 3 is to find the sign. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Here, the third term is positive or negative? Positive. So it means the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term, which is also positive. So the signs are the same, and they're both positive. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So here we have plus and plus. That takes us to step number 4. We need to find the factors of the first and third terms. Our first term is what? X squared, yes? So what are our factors of x squared? X and x. Because x times x gives us x squared, yes? The only other one that we could possibly have is 1 and x squared, but that does not help us for this here. So x and x is our only factors of x squared, so we go on in, plug them in. Since it's in the first spot, it's going in the first spots. Factors of the third term, we're looking for the factors of 21. For 21, we have 1 and 21 and 3 and 7. Since we have more than one, I list them out to just make sure we get them all. I always start with 1 on the left, so 1 and 21, 2 is not a factor of 21. 3 is, so we have 3 and 7. 4 does not work. It would be 4 and 5.25. 5 is not a factor of 21. It would be 5 and 4.25. So we've actually listed them all because the right side of factors met the left side of factors. They crossed over. So we are here. Step number 4, or step number 5, is to plug in and check. Which set of factors of 21 do we want to try first? 3 and 7. And when we check this here, we're not checking everything. We're not going to multiply everything out because x times x is x squared. We should expect that because x and x are the factors of x squared. By definition, they should multiply back together to give us x squared. Positive 3 and positive 7 should multiply together to give us positive 21. Well, yes, those are the factors of 21, so they should multiply back together to give us 21. The main one we're checking for is the middle term. Now, when solving, when we check this, I would not write this immediately underneath our set of parentheses here. Because after this point, if this is the correct set of factors, are we done? No, we still have to solve, so there are more steps below. So when I check this here, especially with solving x times 7, I would come over to the left or right side just in kind of the margin and make sure this gives us the correct term. So x times 7 is 7x. Positive 3 times x is positive 3x. 7x plus 3x gives us positive 10x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Yes. So that checking step is just making sure, are these the correct factors? We got 10x as the middle term, so they are the correct factors. So as we look at this now, we have x plus 3 times x plus 7, yeah? Now do I have two things multiplied together that equal 0? Yes. Because x plus 3 is being multiplied with x plus 7. So that's telling me that either x plus 3 is equal to 0 or x plus 7 is equal to 0. So we factored it to get it in a form where we have two or more things being multiplied together to equal 0. So one of them has to be 0. With x plus 3, the first thing we can do is what? Subtract 3 from both sides because our 3 minus 3 is 0. Leaving us with x on the left-hand side. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. With x plus 7, we can subtract 7 from both sides, telling us x is equal to negative 7. Questions on this here? Now, you don't have to write this part because I'm going to go through and just check it. I'm going to show us that these are the correct answers because if we went and plugged it back in, negative 3 squared plus 10 times negative 3 plus 21. If I plug negative 3 back into the original equation, this should simplify to what? 0, yes? Now at this point, we could plug this whole thing in the calculator and let it tell us what it is. But if we do this by hand, negative 3 squared, negative 3 times negative 3 is going to give us 9. Positive 10 times negative 3 is going to be negative 30 plus 21. 9 minus 30 is negative 21. And negative 21 plus 21 is indeed 0. So it shows us that this does give us a value of 0. So that is one of our solutions. We can do the same thing. But instead of negative 3, we'll plug in negative 7. Negative 7 squared, negative 7 times negative 7 is going to be positive 49. 10 times negative 7 is negative 70 plus 21. 49 minus 70 is negative 21, and 21 plus negative 21 is still 0. So both of these values, negative 7 and negative 3, make this equation equal to 0. That's it. So we can use factoring to be able to solve these quadratic equations. We can find our solutions, the values of x that make the function be 0. Let's look at this next one. Here we do not have two things multiplied together to equal 0, but we do have the x squared, the x term, and the constant term, our term without a variable, all on the same side, yes? So that means we can start factoring. So when we look at this here, first thing we need to look at, is there a greatest common factor between 4x squared, 20x, and negative 24? 4. So the first thing we can do is factor that out. And if we factor 4 out of 4x squared, we're left with x squared. If we factor a 4 out of 20x, we get 5x. And if we factor 4 out of negative 24, we get negative 6. So we should get 4 times x squared plus 5x minus 6. So we're really just dividing each of those constant terms by 4 to get to our new expression. Now we can go to step number 2, our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now we need to find the sign. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Is the third term positive or negative? Negative, so our signs are opposite. Doesn't matter what the middle term sign is for this. No, because what does it say? If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. We don't even look at the middle term if the third term is negative. It's just the signs are opposite. One is positive, one is negative. If the third term is negative, the signs are automatically opposite. It doesn't matter what the middle term sign is. Third term's negative, signs are opposite automatically. The only time we look at the middle term is if, or the middle, sorry, not middle term, the middle term is if the third term is positive. The only time we look at the sign of the middle term when finding signs is if the third term is positive. Now we need to look at the factors of the first and third term. First term is x squared, yes? What's our only factors for x squared? Well, x and x. Same thing with v squared, y squared, m squared, n squared, q squared, z squared, or everyone's favorite t squared, because t definitely does not look like a plus sign. But any of those there is going to be m and n, t and t, v and v, each one. Is there a number with our x squared? No, we factored it out. So it's just x and x. Now we need to find the factors of 6. So 6 is 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? 2 and 3. At this point here, we can just check it off to the side, make sure we get this right. X times negative 3 is going to be negative 3x. 2 times x is going to be positive 2x. And negative 3x plus 2x is negative 1x. If you do struggle with the negatives and positives, again, we can't type negative 3x plus 2x in the calculator, but we can type in negative 3 plus 2, because that's really what we're doing. And we get negative 1. Is that the middle term we wanted? Now, we could switch the 2 and 3, but because the numbers in front of x are the same, it's just going to change it from negative x to positive x. So we have to switch from 2 and 3 to 1 and 6. Where do we want to put the 6? Where do we want to put the 1? We'll check it again. X times 6, negative 6, is going to be negative 6x. 1 times x is going to be plus x. And negative 6x plus x, negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5x. Is that the middle term we wanted? So we can switch 6 and 1, or we can switch the plus and minus. Either one works for this here. So if you switch the 6 and 1, that'll work. If you switch the plus and minus, that'll work. Part of the reason we can switch the 6 and 1 here is because the numbers in front of x are both 1. Yeah, they're both the same. When we have the same x's, if it was x and x, 2x, 2x, 3x, 3x, they're the same, we can switch the 1 and 6 nicely. If the numbers in front of the x's are not the same, we can still do that, but we'd have to switch the numbers in front of the x's and the other numbers. We'd have to switch everything but the signs. Either one works, because if we check this here, x times 6 is now positive 6x. Negative 1 times x is negative x, giving us the middle term of positive 5x. Questions on this here so far? Now we do have two or more things multiplied together to equal 0, yes? So one of these has to be 0. So we know that x minus 1 is going to be 0. X plus 6 is 0 also, yes? But we also have the 4 out front. Am I able to put any value in with this 4? Is there any way that I can put an input value, a value of x in with the 4? Well, no, it's just 4 out front, yes? There's nothing with that. We don't do anything with it. It's just 4 times these amounts. Because there is no x with 4, there's nothing we can do with it. If it had been 4x times x minus 1 times x minus 6, yes, we would set 4x equal to 0 and solve. But it's just 4. There's nothing we can do with the 4. It's just a constant amount. So the only two places where we can have a 0 is with x minus 1 and x plus 6. Those are the only two places we can have a value of x that would make them be 0. Now with x minus 1, we would add 1 to both sides, telling us x is equal to 1. X plus 6, we would minus 6, telling us x is equal to negative 6. So these here are the two values of x that would make this function be 0. Mr. McClendon? I do. Okay. You're welcome. Bye. Lashana, after we finish, Miss Gail wants to see you. Questions on this one here? We'll skip that one for now. All right. Let's look at this one here. (15b squared plus 4b minus 4). Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? No. Everything is on the left-hand side, so we're good there. And all the terms don't have to be necessarily on the left side. They just need to be all on the same side. Now we need to find the signs. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So here the 4 is negative, so our signs are opposite. Doesn't matter which one we set is positive, which one we set is negative. One of them has to be negative, one of them has to be positive. So we set one is positive, one is negative. Brings us to step number 4, our factors of the first and third terms. So our factors of 15b squared, well, b squared is going to be b and b. Now we do need to find the factors of 15. There is more than one. We have 1 and 15 or 3 and 5. Which one do we want to pick first or try first? 1 and 15 or 3 and 5? 3 and 5. So we'll pick it and plug it in. 3 in one of the places, 5 in the other. Factors of the third term is factors of 4, which is 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Which would we like to try first? 2 and 2? Right. And lastly, we're going to check. 3b times 2, 3 times 2 would be 6. b, positive 6b. Negative 2 times 5b, negative 2 times 5 would be negative 10b. And 6b minus 10b is negative 4b. Is that the middle term we wanted? No. So what would we need to do to fix it? We can switch the signs. Now, because the third term, or this number in the third spot in each of those sets of parentheses was both 2, we could have switched the 3b and 5b. Switch the 3 and 5, and that would have worked. But here, if we switch the signs, 3b times negative 2 would be negative 6b. Positive 2 times 5b would be positive 10b, which does indeed give us the positive 4b that we wanted. And since we have 2 or more things multiplied together to equal 0, one of these has to be 0. Either 3b plus 2 is 0, or 5b minus 2 is 0. With 3b plus 2, the first thing I'll do is subtract 2, because our 2 minus 2 would be 0, telling us 3b is equal to negative 2. Then we would divide both sides by 3, telling us b is equal to negative 2 thirds. With 5b minus 2, the first thing we can do is add 2 to both sides, telling us 5b is equal to 2. Then we would divide both sides by 5, telling us b is equal to 2/5. Questions on this here? Question on anything we've done so far? We feel good with this here. Yes? 7p squared minus 38p minus 24. Is there a greatest common factor between these 3 terms? 7 would be what we would want, yes? 38 divided by 7 is 24 divided by 7. That's 27. 24 divided by 7. So unfortunately, 7 does not go into all 3 terms. And all 3 terms are p squared p and our constant term are all on the same side. It is equal to 0. So we can start factoring. There is no greatest common factor, so we get our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Here, the third term sign is negative. So our signs are automatically opposite. Doesn't matter which order we put them in. One of the signs has to be positive, the other has to be negative. So we have plus and minus. Now we need to find the factors of the first and third terms. So 7p squared, we know that we'll have p and p. Since p squared showed up in the first term, we put it in the first spots. If p squared showed up in the third term, we would put it in the third spots. Factors of 7. Well, 1 and 7, yes. So I'm just going to stick the 7 in one of the 2 spots, one of the 2 places with p. And we put 1 with the other, but 1p and p are the same thing. 24, on the other hand, has a few factors. We have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. The next number that could possibly be a factor would be 5, but 5 is not, so we have them all. Because the one after 5 would be 6, it's already listed. Which one do we want to try first? 2 and 12 or 4 and 6? Which one? 2 and 12? So if we try this here, 7p times negative 12, 7 times negative 12 is going to be negative 84p. 2 times p is going to be plus 2p. And negative 84p plus 2p is negative 82p. What we can do next is we can switch the 2 and 12 and try again. 7p times negative 2. 7 times negative 2 is going to be negative 14p. 12 times p is going to be plus 12p. And negative 14 plus 12 is going to be negative 2p. So that did not give us the middle term that we wanted. What can we try next? 4 and 6. I'm going to stick the 6 with 7, 4 with the p. 7p times negative 4 is going to be negative 28p. 6 times p is going to be plus 6p, giving us negative 22p. Not quite what we wanted. I might need to switch it. 7p times negative 6 is going to be negative 42p. 4 times p is plus 4p, giving us negative 38p. Okay, so that is the middle term that we wanted. And since it is, it tells us that these two being multiplied together to equal 0 means that either 7p plus 4 is 0 or p minus 6 is 0. I'll start with the 7p minus 4. If we're going to solve this here, the first thing that we'll do is subtract 4 from both sides, because our 4 minus 4. We'll simplify out, leaving us with 7p on the left-hand side. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. Subtract 7 from both sides, telling us p is equal to negative 4 sevenths. For our p minus 6, we would add 6 to both sides, telling us p is equal to 6. So just because one of them is a fractional answer doesn't mean both are. So we have p is equal to negative 4 sevenths, and p is equal to 6. Questions on this here? Are you ready for number 8? Three p squared minus 120 equals negative 9p. Is everything on the same side? No. It is not on the same side, is not equal to 0. So before we start doing anything, we need to get this equation equal to 0. And the only thing that's on the wrong side is the negative 9p. So to move it from one side to the other, we would add 9p to both sides. Because negative 9p plus 9p is indeed 0. Now on the left-hand side, 3p squared and 9p are not like terms. And 9p and negative 120 are not like terms. Yes, so we can't combine any of those. And when we rewrite it, we want to make sure that we are in standard form. Standard form is going to be the squared term, term to the first, term without a variable. So our variable squared, variable to the first power, term without a variable. We want it in descending order. This is standard form. Now that we have everything on the same side, we can try factoring this here. First step in factoring is to see if there's a greatest common factor amongst these three terms. Then we're wanting to make sure the term squared does not have a negative in front of it. Well, this here has a greatest common factor of 3. And if we factor 3 out of all three terms, we end up with 3 times p squared plus 3p minus 40. At this point here, we'll have two sets of parentheses with three spaces. And since the third term is negative, our signs are going to be opposite. One's going to be positive, one is going to be negative. Now we're going to find the factors of the first and third term. The first one's kind of nice. It's p squared. Well, the only two things that multiply together to be p squared is going to be p and p. Factors of 40, there are several. We have 1 and 40. 2 and 20. 3 doesn't work, but 4 and 10. 5 and 8. 6 doesn't work. The main reason 6 doesn't work is because 2 and 3 didn't work. So we have 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. 5 and 8, which 5 in the second, 8 in the first. And we can check this here. P times negative 5 would be negative 5p. Positive 8 times p would be positive 8p. Negative 5 plus 8, 8 minus 5 is indeed positive 3p. And we factored it and did this so that we get two things multiplied together, two or more things multiplied together equals 0, so one of them has to be 0. So for our p plus 8, we would minus 8 from both sides, telling us p is equal to negative 8. P minus 5, we would add 5 to both sides, telling us p is equal to 5. Questions on this here? So even if they don't equal 0, the main thing we have to do is just get them to equal 0 by adding or subtracting our term from one side to the other. We just got to move it all to the same side. Yes. So if we look at this here, 5m squared minus 280 equals negative 5m. We have to move our negative 5m from the right side to the left. And to do that, we would add 5m to both sides. Because on the right side, our negative 5m plus 5m, negative 5 plus 5 is indeed 0. And that gives us 5m squared plus 5m minus 280. Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? Well, yes, it is 5. Well, we have 5n squared 5m, that has 5. And since 280 ends in a 0, 5 is definitely a factor. Because this would be 5 would be 25, 6. I believe we do get 56. Since we have our greatest common factor taken out, we've simplified that down. We'll have two sets of parentheses with three spaces. And since the third term is negative, our signs have to be opposite. Now we have to find the factors of the first and third terms. First term, m squared, is going to be m and m. 56 has 1 and 56, 2 and 28. 3 does not work. 4 works, it'd be 4 and 14. 5 does not work. 6 does not work. 7 and 8. And that's it. Part of the reason we know that's it is because when I start listing these factors, I always start at 1 and the number itself and then start increasing on the left-hand side. Because the last one that works was 7 and 8. Well, the next number after 7 is 8. It's already listed. Or if it wasn't, if it's at 7 and 12, I try 8 and it's 8 and 8 point something or 8 and 7. it starts getting lower on the right side than it is on the left, we're also done. Now we just have to pick one of these factors, 7 and 8. At this point here, we set these two equal to 0 and solve. So n plus 7, we would subtract 7 from both sides, telling us n is equal to -7. Add 8 to both sides, and it tells us that n is equal to 8. Yes. Ah, thank you. Yep. That would have given us -m. Yep. Switch that. So 7 and -8. Thank you. Have the signs flipped. I'm thinking too far ahead. Are there questions on any of this here? Do we feel comfortable with this here? Yes? Okay. Because that is it. The bell is about to ring. For the homework for this here, worksheet. Okay? Let's see here. I will go on and pass these out. Make sure to grab one. Okay. Yeah. You're welcome. Here's 4 there, 3 here.